"Where did this painting come from?" asked Walter, the antique shop owner, examining the 17th century painting the customer had brought. "Inherited from my grandmother," the young man said nervously. But Walter's trained eyes immediately noticed. This painting was stolen from the Met Museum 3 months ago. The customer didn't know that the ordinary antique dealer facing him had worked for 25 years on the FBI art crime team. Welcome to Echo Stories. Before we begin this powerful story, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from. And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button to support our channel. Walter Morrison's antique shop sat on the corner of Elm Street in Millbrook, Connecticut, a quiet New England town where nothing much ever happened. Morrison's Antiques and Collectibles had been there for 18 years, and Walter had built a reputation as a fair dealer who knew his business. At 67, Walter was a soft-spoken man with wire-rimmed glasses and gray hair. Customers found him knowledgeable but never pushy. He'd examine their pieces carefully, offer honest appraisals, and either make a fair offer or politely decline. What they didn't know was that behind those gentle eyes was a man who had spent 25 years with the FBI art crime team, tracking down stolen masterpieces worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He'd worked cases from the Gardner Museum heist to Nazi-looted art recovery operations. Walter had retired to this quiet life by choice, after decades of chasing criminals through the shadowy world of art theft. He wanted peace. The antique shop gave him that: honest transactions, interesting pieces, and the satisfaction of helping people discover the value of their family heirlooms. But old habits die hard. Even in retirement, Walter couldn't help but analyze every piece that came through his door. It was a Tuesday morning in October when Marcus Chen walked into the shop. Early 20s, well-dressed, carrying a carefully wrapped painting. He seemed nervous, not the excited nervousness of someone hoping for good news about a family treasure, but the jittery anxiety of someone with something to hide. "Good morning," Walter said warmly. "How can I help you?" I have this painting. I need to know what it's worth." Walter gestured to the examination table. "Of course. Let's take a look." Marcus unwrapped the piece carefully. Walter's breath caught in his throat, but he kept his expression neutral. The painting was a 17th century Dutch master, specifically a piece he recognized from an FBI bulletin 3 months ago. "Beautiful piece," Walter said calmly. "Do you mind if I ask where you acquired it?" "It was my grandmother's. She passed away last year, and I'm settling her estate." Walter nodded, continuing his examination. The painting was definitely authentic and definitely stolen. He'd seen the crime scene photos when it disappeared from the Metropolitan Museum of Art during their renovation. "This is quite valuable," Walter said. 17th century Dutch school. "May I ask your grandmother's name? Sometimes provenance helps with authentication." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Rose Chen. She collected art her whole life." Walter made a mental note. In 25 years with the FBI, he'd learned that nervous sellers often provided details that didn't add up. While examining the painting, Walter discreetly photographed the back of the canvas with his phone. Every stolen artwork had unique identifiers: frame markings, canvas stamps, inventory numbers. This piece had them all. "Mr. Chen, this is indeed valuable. I'd like to do some research on comparable sales before giving you a quote. Could you leave it with me for a day or two?" "No," Marcus said quickly. I'd prefer to take it with me. I have other dealers to see." Red flag number 2. Legitimate sellers were usually happy to let experts do proper research. "Of course," Walter said smoothly. "In that case, let me give you a preliminary estimate. Based on the style and period, I'd say somewhere in the range of $50,000 to $80,000. Marcus's eyes lit up. The painting was actually worth closer to $2 million, but Walter wasn't about to tell a thief that. That's great. When could you have a final number? Give me your number and I'll call you tomorrow." After Marcus left, Walter immediately called his former partner at the FBI. Agent Sarah Martinez answered on the second ring. She'd been Walter's partner for 15 years before he retired. Walter, don't tell me you're bored already and want to come back to work. Not exactly. But I think I just had the Met Museum theft walk into my shop. The line went quiet. The Dutch master? You're sure? Positive. Kid brought it in claiming grandmother inheritance, but every detail screams stolen goods. Nervous as hell, wouldn't leave it for proper authentication. Doesn't know what he's got. Can you keep him on the hook? Already told him I'd call tomorrow with a final appraisal. But Sarah, this isn't just one stolen piece. If someone's actively fencing Met artifacts, there's a bigger operation here. Agreed. We'll set up surveillance. Can you play along for a few more days? Walter looked around his peaceful shop. He'd built this quiet life specifically to avoid moments like this. But a $2 million stolen masterpiece had just walked through his door, and hundreds of other pieces might be following the same pipeline. Yeah, I can play along. Over the next few days, Walter dove back into the world he'd left behind. He contacted former colleagues, checked databases, and cross-referenced recent thefts. What he found was disturbing. The Met theft wasn't isolated. Over the past 6 months, pieces had gone missing from galleries in Boston, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. Nothing big enough to make international headlines, but valuable enough to fund serious criminal operations. Agent Martinez called with an update. We've been tracking Marcus Chen. He's small-time, college dropout, some petty theft charges. Someone's using him as a front man. Any idea who's behind it? We're working on it. But Walter, we need you to stay in character. If Chen comes back, we need to trace this up the chain. That evening, Walter sat in his shop after hours, surrounded by the honest antiques he'd collected over the years. Persian rugs, Victorian furniture, Depression-era glassware, pieces with histories, but legal ones. He thought about the painting Marcus had brought in, stolen from the Met during renovation work, which meant it was an inside job. Someone with access had taken it, and now it was being laundered through small-town antique dealers who wouldn't ask too many questions. Except Marcus had chosen the wrong dealer. Marcus called the next morning, exactly as promised. Mr. Morrison, did you finish your research? I did. The good news is, I can make you an offer. The piece is authenticated 17th century Dutch school. Excellent condition. I can offer $75,000. Wow. That's more than I hoped. There's just one thing. For a transaction this size, I need to document the provenance. Do you have any paperwork from your grandmother's collection? Insurance records, purchase receipts, anything like that? Silence on the other end. Walter could practically hear Marcus sweating. I don't think so. She wasn't very organized with records. Not a problem. I can work with what we have. But I will need to see some form of ownership documentation before I can complete the purchase. Estate papers, will documentation, something that shows it legitimately passed to you. How long would that take to get? Depends on your family's records. A few days to a few weeks. I was hoping to complete this sooner. I have some debts. Walter recognized desperation when he heard it. Marcus was under pressure to move the piece quickly. Tell you what. If you're in a hurry, I know some collectors who might be interested in a private sale. Less paperwork, faster transaction. Would you be interested in meeting them? It was a risk, but Walter was betting that Marcus would prefer fewer questions rather than more. Yes, that sounds perfect. Walter coordinated with Agent Martinez to set up a controlled buy operation. They would pose as private collectors interested in acquiring high-end pieces without too many questions. The kind of buyers that art thieves dream about. The meeting was arranged for the following evening at Walter's shop after hours. Marcus would bring the painting, and the collectors would inspect it and make an offer. What Marcus didn't know was that the shop would be wired for video and audio, and that federal agents would be positioned throughout the building. Walter spent the day before the meeting feeling strangely nostalgic. After 18 years of peaceful retirement, he was about to go back undercover one more time. That evening, as he prepared the shop for the operation, Walter reflected on why he was doing this. It wasn't just about the law or the stolen art. It was about something deeper. Every piece in his shop had a story. The Depression-era glassware belonged to families who had treasured it through hard times. The Victorian furniture had been lovingly maintained through generations. The Persian rugs had been woven by artisans who put their hearts into every thread. Art wasn't just decoration, it was human expression, cultural heritage, history itself. When criminals stole masterpieces, they weren't just taking valuable objects, they were stealing pieces of human civilization. Marcus arrived at 7 p.m. sharp, painting in hand. Walter let him in through the back entrance. "The collectors will be here in a few minutes," Walter said. "They're very interested in Dutch masters." "What are they like?" "The collectors?" "Discreet. They prefer to keep their acquisitions private. That's why they're willing to pay premium prices with minimal documentation." Agent Martinez and Agent Johnson arrived posing as Richard and Catherine Wellington, wealthy art enthusiasts from New York. They played their parts perfectly, knowledgeable enough to be credible, but not so inquisitive as to spook Marcus. "This is exquisite," Agent Martinez said, examining the painting. "The brushwork is definitely period correct. Where did you say it came from?" "Family collection," Marcus replied. "Grandmother was an art lover." "Wonderful. We collect 17th century pieces specifically. Do you happen to have others from the same period?" Walter saw Marcus's eyes light up. The question confirmed what Walter had suspected. This wasn't a one-time theft. "I might have access to other pieces. The estate is quite extensive." "We'd be very interested. Quality pieces from that era are becoming increasingly rare." They negotiated a price of $90,000 for the current painting, with the understanding that Marcus would contact them about additional pieces. What happened next was a carefully orchestrated FBI operation. Marcus led them to a storage facility in Hartford where dozens of stolen artworks were being kept. The investigation revealed a sophisticated theft ring operating out of New York, targeting museums during renovation work when security was reduced. The ringleader was Vincent Torelli, a former museum security consultant who had used his access to plan and execute the thefts. Marcus was just one of several young men he'd recruited to fence the stolen pieces in different markets. Over the course of 3 months, the FBI recovered $15 million worth of stolen art and arrested 12 members of the theft ring. Walter's role in the investigation remained confidential, exactly as he preferred. 6 months later, Walter was back to his regular routine. Marcus Chen had cooperated with prosecutors and received a reduced sentence. Vincent Torelli was facing 20 years in federal prison. The stolen masterpieces were returned to their rightful owners, and several museums updated their security protocols based on FBI recommendations. Walter's shop remained what it had always been, a place where honest people could discover the value of their family treasures. But now he had a new appreciation for the peace and legitimacy of his chosen retirement. One morning, an elderly woman brought in a collection of Depression-era glassware that had belonged to her mother. As Walter examined each piece, he thought about the difference between his current life and his former career. During his FBI years, he dealt with stolen masterpieces worth millions. Now he was helping a grandmother understand that her mother's glassware, while not valuable in monetary terms, represented something priceless, family history preserved through love and care. "These pieces tell a story," he told her. "Your mother chose each one carefully, probably during very difficult times. The value isn't in dollars, it's in memory." The woman smiled. That's exactly what she would have said. Walter Morrison continued running his antique shop for 5 more years before finally retiring completely. He never advertised his FBI background, and most of his regular customers never knew about the art theft case he'd helped solve. But law enforcement agencies knew. When complex art theft cases arose, they occasionally called Walter for consultation. He always helped when he could, but he never came out of retirement officially. The antique shop was eventually sold to a young couple who shared Walter's passion for preserving history. Walter made sure they understood that their job wasn't just about buying and selling old things. It was about being guardians of memory, protectors of heritage. Some heroes chase criminals across international borders. Others sit quietly in small towns, watching and waiting for the moment when their particular skills are needed. Walter Morrison had done both. In the end, he decided he preferred the quiet approach. And so, in a small Connecticut town, it was once again proven how deceiving appearances can be. A man seen as a simple antique dealer was actually one of the FBI's most experienced art crime investigators. But more importantly, he had chosen to use his expertise to protect something precious, the honest preservation of human history. Real protectors are like this. They put down their badges but never abandon their mission. They transition from chasing criminals to preventing crime, from solving cases to preserving legitimacy. If this story meant something to you, share your thoughts in the comments. If you believe stories like this should continue to be told, support Echo Stories by subscribing. See you in the next video. And remember, that quiet shop owner in your town might be a guardian of more than just antiques. Everyone has a story, and that story deserves respect.